Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror, the podcast. I'm your host, Kevin L. Powers. I'm also the owner, operator of Something Wicked Entertainment and Events, and I want to welcome you to our show today. Now, if you've been with us over the past couple of years, you'll realize that what we do in our program is we like to take an individual horror film and we kind of discuss it, and we kind of have a conversation about it, and we kind of shoot the shit about an individual horror film that we hope that you've seen before. And if you've not, hopefully after listening to us rant and rave about it, you will actually go out there and check it out. Either way, we hope to, kind of entertain you as we discuss these movies. Because what other way is there to enjoy a horror film other than simply just entertainment value? So with that in mind, I want you to sit back and relax as I bring my guest on, and her name is Sarah Panazzo. We want to welcome Sarah Panazzo to the show today.
Hey, Kevin.
All right. So if you've been with the show, you know that she is a great and avid fan of horror. So talking about the movie today will be very interesting because this is not a well-remembered film, nor is it one of those films that is so bad that it's just horrible, I think. But the movie is 2003's Darkness Falls. It's the movie about the Tooth Fairy. There's not many of them out there, but it's the movie about the Tooth Fairy. So, Panazzo, let me know just kind of generally what is some of your initial thoughts about this film.
I forgot that I had seen this before. It was on my list a long time recently because it kept popping up on TV, and I was like, oh yeah, I need to rewatch this. I think I've never seen it, and then watched it again, and I was like, oh no, I've totally seen this. I just forgot it. Because it's not a bad movie. I mean, it is bad, but it's also just very forgettable because it is just cut and paste generic horror movie. I feel from beginning to end, and it's such a waste of a good cast, some good writers, and some what were going to be good effects. And now it's kind of just one of those throw it on TV horror movies that won't offend anybody if you put it on.
So I will agree with you a whole bunch of what you just said, because I saw this movie in the theater thinking it was gonna be really cool and shit. Because we'll probably touch upon this a little later in the episode in regards to the McFarlane toys that were being made at the time, and I was a huge fan of the toys. So the only thing that I knew about this movie really before seeing it in 2003 was that it had Emma Caulfield in it, who was from Buffy the Vampire Slayer originally. And she was, I guess, trying to break out into other stuff at the time. That's pretty much the only thing I went to go see this movie for. Everything else was just kind of, it's a horror film. Oh, goody, let's go see a horror film. And you're right. It's a very generic horror film from beginning to end. In fact, this movie is so plot driven, you barely get to know anything about any of these characters because it goes from point A to point B to point C in a plot driven structure. And so it is kind of, forgettable,
Yeah. Also the whole time aspect of it, of like they're young kids, they're in love, and it's like 12 years later, and all of a sudden they're like 30 something years old, and it's like, I don't know. I don't really see this.
No, you're right, and so we should discuss some of this because the movie does open with our main character. I think what's his name, Kyle.
Kyle and Caitlin.
Kyle and Caitlin. And so they're young. They're in this really young love stage.
Yeah, I mean, he lost his last baby tooth. So that can tell you how old he is.
And if you've never watched the film, I'm sure there's a lot of you out there that haven't. The whole ideal behind this, and the only reason why it's called Darkness Falls is because it takes place in a fictionalized town called Darkness Falls. And in this town, there is a urban legend about when you lose your baby teeth, there's a tooth fairy that will come and take your tooth. But if you see her as she's doing it, she will kill you. It's a very strange premise, so to speak. But it's all kind of based around this innocent woman who used to do this. I don't even remember how old she was.
Dixon, but yeah, she was an old woman in the town who the kids would bring her their teeth, and then she would give them a gold coin, and then there was an accident or some kids went missing and they decided to like burn her alive because they thought she was a witch. And yeah,
Yeah, well, they burned her alive, and she curses the entire town. But then the next day, the children show up, and they burned an innocent person alive. And from then on, for centuries, or however long it is between that time and present day,
yeah,
uh, children have been disappearing periodically. But it's all under the disguise of this urban legend that parents have been telling their children and all that stuff through the years. Um, but when we find Kyle and Caitlin, he gets visited by the so-called Tooth Fairy, but he ends up seeing her. And then there's this big, like, short, I guess a short little action sequence between him and the Tooth Fairy, and then his mother not believing him, and his mother coming in wanting to show there is no Tooth Fairy. There's no Tooth Fairy. There's nothing to be scared of. And then
and then surprise.
yeah, surprise. She's killed. He watches, and from then on out, that happens, and of course, no one in town believes what his story.
Yeah,
And then,
they
of
think
course,
that he killed her, and there was actually like original script wise, it was supposed to leave it very generic if he killed her or not, and they weren't going to reveal the Tooth Fairy until the end, which could have been interesting, but they did not decide to go that direction, and instead they put one of the most boring monsters of all time.
and, the funny thing about that is, this guy Kyle leaves Darkness Falls to go somewhere else. And the entire time he was growing up, he's still believing that the Tooth Fairy could travel from Darkness Falls to wherever the hell he is to kill him
Yeah.
in the darkness. That's one of the things I really didn't like. What? That doesn't make any sense. He's still afraid, even though he's left the town. And I don't know of any ghost that likes to travel hundreds and hundreds of miles to get to any person in particular. So that was really screwed up in terms of the plot of the film, in my opinion. You want me to go on?
Sure.
Of course, like 12 years later, when they're 30 years old now, Caitlin's younger brother, uh,
Except it totally could have been her son in this movie.
it
I
could have.
originally thought that's the direction they were going, is it was going to be her son, but no, that's supposed to be her child brother.
Which makes so weird of a thing because we never see parents anywhere. We don't know what happened to them. The only
Nope.
time we ever see them is when they were young, and the police are carting away Kyle in the ambulance after his mother is killed. We see the other kids and Caitlin and some of the parents, and they're all watching this happen. And I think that's probably the only time we ever see her parents, if we see her parents in that scene, because you're kind of wondering if you have a young son this young, and there's brother, there's absolutely no mention of where the parents are, or why she's taking care of them, or any of that stuff. It's just kind of weird.
Joke's on us. The Tooth Fairy took all of them.
Yeah, yeah, we don't know all that, but we do later in the film. We do say, Kyle does confront one of the police officers about, have you ever wondered why so many people are missing? I was like, oh no, we never wonder why people are missing. Well, why haven't you're in a small town? Should have noticed some
Yeah.
shit.
There's that. There's the whole jail fight sequence where at first they think he's magically attacking all of them through the bars of the cell, so they start shooting at him, and it's
And,
kind of a
well,
mess of a movie.
wait, yeah, and that's part of the thing because Kyle spends a lot of time in the jail cell in this movie, surprisingly. And that's why I said that it's the plot point, the plot point, the plot point, because you don't get to really know any of these characters. You get to, yeah, Kyle, who was screwed up when he was a kid. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, random guy in the bar who we've never heard of before decides to attack him for no reason. I
I
mean,
I want to think that he and Larry, who is the person seeing Caitlin as a grown up, supposedly, were two of the kids that watched him be carted off by the police. That's what I imagine, anyways.
yeah,
But you bring up that one guy in the bar, and I forgot, I didn't realize who it
Andy
was.
Sampson, who is probably now arguably one of the most famous people in this movie.
Exactly. I was like, wait a second, he was in this movie? Holy
I
shit!
was like, oh shit. And then Emily Browning being the
The young
young
Caitlin.
her, and I was like, oh, those are the two big names in this besides Emma Caulfield, and everybody else, nothing.
Yeah, nothing, nothing, nothing. But the funny thing about this movie, other than the fact that Emma Caulfield, Caitlin has a brother who's could be her son, is that he's suffering from night terrors in the movie from the very beginning, and she doesn't know how to deal with it because he's claiming to have seen the Tooth Fairy and all that kind of stuff. So she calls her old, friend slash like interest. I can't say love interest. There's every
Yeah.
it
They were
seems
like
weird.
12. It was her crush.
Crush. That's a better way. Her crush out of the blue, because he was suffering from the same thing that her brother is, in theory. Of course, I would be hesitant that anyone would tell her after he's left town exactly what he was suffering from. So I always thought that was kind of weird too. Or actually, I think it was more weird when I rewatched the movie and I actually was paying attention to some of the logic in the movie, trying to figure that shit out.
There was no logic, Kevin. I mean, who else hits up their childhood crush who may or may not have murdered his own mother?
And he was in a mental institution for as long as he was. It's just like if you're gonna figure out where he is and all that type of stuff, you probably come up with the fact that he spent a lot of time in a mental institution. Uh, but Caitlin calls him up and he shows up. But when he shows up, Kyle wants to play as though there's no such thing as a tooth fairy. Like he meets Michael for the very first time, Caitlin's brother, before he sees Caitlin, and he's trying to tell her, he's trying to tell him, not, there's no tooth fairy, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, dude, you've been spending your whole life believing in the damn tooth fairy killing people, and now you're gonna convince the little kid who's the most receptive, sorry, um,
Especially in that town.
yeah,
Like you said, where it only happens there. You're gonna try and tell him that you imagined it all too. It was all fake. Don't worry about it, kid. You're not gonna not wake up in the morning from seeing the tooth fairy.
So yeah, it seems to be kind of weird that that's how they decided to make the plot go, because it stays like that for a while, because he even tries to play it off to Caitlin like that as well. It's like he doesn't want to acknowledge that, despite he's been living with it for so freaking long. Uh, like we said, people, plot driven. The logic is not really there for the film. They kind of hope that you're gonna go with the generic ideals in the film and be scared by the tooth fairy, who hides in the dark because she can't be revealed in the light, because one, her skin is sensitive to light after being burned, and she wears a porcelain mask which hides her facial features, what makes her even less scary when she's wearing the freaking porcelain mask. I don't know why they decided to go with that. It's not that scary with a porcelain mask. So there
No.
are a lot of jump scares in this movie.
And
Oh,
they are not good jump scares at all.
you know what? And that could be why I originally didn't take to the film, because there was the jump scares don't do much for me unless they are really really well done. We still haven't talked about the movie I still want to talk to you about, which is The Nun, which I think does a really good job with jump scares. But that's all that's in that movie as well. It's jump scares, but I think they do it really well. This movie here does jump scares really badly. Like we're doing jump scares for like the 12-year-old watching this movie, and not so much any grown up watching this movie.
This definitely was a children's horror movie, and that's about it. It doesn't have to make sense. It just has to be creepy enough that they know not to wake up and spy on anybody who's in their bedroom.
You know what? That's actually a good point to make. I would agree with you on that, actually. I never thought about it that way. It's a movie that, may have scared little kids and stuff, but probably not many other people. As the movie progresses, random people in the town start getting killed every time they're around
Walk
Kyle.
into Well, and especially when they walk into darkness, like there's the whole scene of them jumping down the stairs from lit stairwell to lit stairwell so they wouldn't be in the darkness because she might grab them. But then at the same time, they're like walking through the hospital through dark spots, and it's like, why don't you guys just like start a fire and like stand next to it if she can't go near the light? Like you keep going into the dark on purpose.
uh, Like we're saying, everyone, Darkness Falls is one of those. And you know what? And that was probably one of the scenes that I like for the stupidity of it. Them jumping from the stairwell at the very end of the movie to get away after most of the cast has been killed, and people start believing Kyle that there's a freaking tooth fairy. Lights start going off in the stairwell because they're trying to flee the hospital through the stairwell, and they're trying to jump from one point in the light to the next point in the light because lights keep going off in the stairwell. Now, I don't know why there's these little spotlights in the stairwell to begin with, unless were they
I think they're
emergency
supposed to
lights?
be emergency lights for if the power goes out.
Those are weird emergency lights for a stairwell, even though. But
Yeah.
2003, who knows? Maybe hospitals have them like that. But it makes for a very interesting situation in that you get every time someone falls in the dark as they're jumping, they get taken away by the tooth fairy. Uh, so, and the only reason why the tooth fairy is killing these people, random people, because there's like nurses and a doctor that
Yeah.
are with Kyle and Caitlin as they're fleeing the hospital, is the fact that they happen to see her at one point in the film, and so now their lives are in danger, which is
And only because Kyle is right next to them too.
yeah,
That's
Kyle's
it.
right there. So, while you're watching this, you have to figure out that this Tooth Fairy is really pissed off at Kyle for leaving and not dying when she could have had him, because the moment he gets back into town, she's going after Kyle. It's
Yep.
like every time Kyle's with someone, the person from the bar, Larry, when the whole Larry thing, they just all die because they're near him. I don't.
Yeah. I mean, you get some like smarter stuff when you get like the MRI
Oh,
and the kids going into there, and it really reminded me of like Nightmare on Elm Street
oh.
in some way. And I was like, okay, this could be really interesting. And then they're like, oh no, let's save the kid in time and nothing bad's gonna happen. But eh.
So you can hear her enthusiasm about this film.
So enthused.
And as you know, on the program, we like to talk about some of the more, well-known films. But this may be one of those films right there, Darkness Falls, that kind of came and went, and people remember it. Maybe, probably more so for the toys or lack thereof, and everything else because this was supposed to be a big film when it came out. This was
Yeah,
supposed to be
so
a film.
the producer was John Hegman, who is known for pulling together the Blair Witch Project marketing. So, very famous for doing that, did a great job. He actually did a mockumentary to promote this film in the same style to kind of get it pushed. And he was voicing hopes that this was going to be the first in a wide franchise. But as we can see, that did not go too well.
Which is despite the fact that it's one of is it Jonathan Liebesman's first film as a director, who has gone
It
on
is
to do it.
indeed. It was his debut director thing. But then he went on to do Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
Yeah.
The Beginning, Battle Los Angeles, Wrath of the Titans, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in 2014, and he's now doing episodes of Halo.
Mm-hmm.
But also, disappointingly enough, the writers on this were actually really good. So you got Joe Harris, who this was adapted from his short story. It's also his movie debut, but he is known for multiple comic books, mostly the X-Files, a lot of X-Men, Spider-Man, Batman. He did a lot of the Halloween specials for DCU, Vampirella. And then the other significant writer on this is James Vanderbilt, who is known and awarded for doing Zodiac, Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, Scream 5 and 6. And then you get some movies he did like White House Down and Murder Mystery 1 and 2. So it's kind of a mix, but he's done some good movies. He was actually Mr. LaBelle in Ready or Not because he's part of that group of people who do radio silence. So he is quite talented, and so is Joe Harris. I don't know if it was a director thing. I don't know if it was a production thing and what happened with this, but it kind of all fell apart.
I think this is the early 2000s, and we know towards the late 90s and early 2000s we weren't getting great horror films. We were getting great concepts. And so, I guarantee you this was sold based on it being one of the few films to try and make a horror version of the Tooth Fairy. After this one, obviously there has been cheaper and cheaper low budget movies that came out based on the Tooth Fairy. One actually called the Tooth Fairy, but this one, they were trying to figure out, or in theory, studios were trying to figure out, and production companies were trying to figure out what can be the next horror icon that we can create. Let's create the Tooth Fairy as well.
And I think executive meddling is exactly what happened to this, because like I sent you earlier, there's the McFarlane toys that they came out with based on the original design of the Tooth Fairy in this. And then there are some stills of the original costume. So it was originally created by Steve Wang, who did the Predator special effects, and Doug Jones was going to be in a suit. It was very like wispy. It was going to be covered in teeth. It's generally quite frightening and disturbing if you look at the toy or the pictures. And then you find out that heads of production didn't like the creature, so they decided to swap it over for two other big artists. So Stan Winston, who's done a ton of stuff, but it's this very boring life-size puppet that's just, like you said, Kevin, a porcelain mask and like a black sheet. And like sometimes you might see little bits of her burnt face, but it's not great. And compared to like what this looks like, this could have been phenomenal and haunting, because it is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. And, in the movie itself, since she's wearing the porcelain mask the entire time until the very end, all we see at the very end is just a burnt face.
Yeah.
It's pretty much, it looks like a female version of Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
Just CGI, because most of what she does in the film all looks very CGI.
Well, and from what I believe, they actually filmed some of the stuff with the original Tooth Fairy, didn't like it, were coming up with a new concept, and then they CGI'd the final Tooth Fairy in, so all of the actors were acting to nothing most of the movie.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And for everyone out there listening, I am going to put in the show notes for this show some of the links that we're talking about, so you can see some of the original stuff that was designed for Darkness Falls before it was all changed. Because that's always a good thing to have, especially if you've never seen the film, to see what it could have been. So yeah. And also I want to remind everyone that there is actually a comic book version of this as well.
Yes.
I can't remember if it was a prequel or sequel, or if it was an adaptation.
Prequel, and it is written by Joe Harris, the one director or the one writer for this. Like I said, I feel like it's a lot of executive meddling gone wrong, because between two of the writers, it sounds fantastic. On paper, it should work. With this creature, it should have worked. And then they decided to very much dull it down.
Yeah. I think your comment that it almost feels like a kid's film, it's scary but not too scary for kids, is exactly what it feels like. I never thought about that until you mentioned it. I was like, that is why I didn't care for it when I was. I probably didn't care for it when I originally saw it in 2003. I was much too old for it, because this film has never really affected me at all, and I've seen it like 4 times now. Every once in a while, I want to go back and say, is it really as bad as I remembered it? My opinions haven't changed. There's always these couple of scenes that I like. But the logic in this film is what tears me apart, because it just seems it's so plot driven, and I don't care about any of the characters or what they're going through, and they're not all that interesting.
Yeah, there's not that much gore. The scares aren't that scary. The monster isn't scary. So it's just kind of meh.
Yeah. Well, all of the deaths are pretty much in the dark, because she can't kill anyone in the light, which makes it kind of funny. We always see like a body drops or something like that. We see the aftermath, but we never see her like kill anyone. There's a lot of Tooth Fairy dropping down, grabbing people, taking them up in the darkness, and then we see the body later, or not. Towards the end of the film, when she's just killing people left and right because of the nurses and the doctors that have seen her, we never see the bodies again. She takes them up in the air and in darkness, and they're gone. And then, whoops, sorry, Uh, so you know, and that's one of the things about this movie. It will not leave an impression on you. You know, Panazzo, you've completely forgot you had seen the film until you rewatched it. I only remembered it because a friend of mine thought this was absolutely terrifying to her, and I always was trying to figure out why. It's like, really? Really? Yeah, that's kind of weird, girl. Okay. But and you know, hey, to each is their own, I guess. You know, and I'm sure the people out there who own some of the McFarlane toys are probably shooting themselves in the foot, and you know. Uh I know I sold all mine, so you know, I don't have them. I don't have the Tooth Fairy toy anymore. Uh, are there any particular qualities in this film, Panazzo, that you think actually succeeded in some way?
No, Kevin. No, I did not. If you want your kids to watch a not so scary horror movie, this is definitely the one because you can. It's about the Tooth Fairy, okay? Like growing up, you're always taught, like, oh, maybe Santa Claus might be scary because you can't catch him, otherwise something bad happens. But they never tell you what. This is the prime example of what happens when the Tooth Fairy catches you. But as they get older and they realize certain things, this movie becomes a lot less scary and then it is not scary at all. Whereas there's some like terrifying children's movies like Black Cauldron and such that
Yeah.
like as an adult you're still looking back like they let me watch this.
Yeah,
This
that's
movie
pretty dark.
is completely safe for children to watch.
So I do want to mention one of the things I do like about the movie. Now, I don't usually mention this in a lot of movies that we talk about unless it really is good. But that would be the score. Brian Tyler did the score for this. Being in 2000, you know, the guy has done like way like a thousand scores by now. But he's always been a dependable person for me, and that's probably the only standout of the film is the score itself. I actually forgot about it until I rewatched it, which is kind of sad because it was a movie I just decided I needed to forget about. I don't usually forget about his scores, but when rewatching the film, I realized that that's probably one of the elements that makes it actually entertaining to watch, or what was it? You know, passable to watch. Like you could throw this movie in the background and just listen to the fucking score and still be enticed by the score, but nothing else on screen unless you're a little kid, of course. Um, but I do want to point that out because the score itself does a lot with the pacing in this movie, and because the plot, the film is so plot driven, uh, it actually pushes each of the scenes through really fast because this is not that long of a movie, guys.
No, not
It's
at
not
all.
that long of a movie. And when Kyle is spending most of his time in the jail cell, you know, the most entertaining part is when you know he's trapped in the jail cell and you know the Tooth Fairy is killing all these cops. If we saw what she was doing to the cops, it would be a great scene, but we don't see any of that because they keep it on they keep it off screen. She just it's in the dark. People get shot. People get killed. Keep taking. They get taken up into the darkness. But since we don't see any of it, it's like, oh man, such a missed opportunity. And it's at the end of towards the end of the movie, such a missed opportunity. Um. So there, you have Brian Tyler's score. That's a one good thing. And if you've never seen a movie that takes place in a lighthouse, some if you haven't seen the Lighthouse, you should probably go see that. But if you have not seen a movie about anything that takes place in a lighthouse, the ending of this is not nearly that bad. Just take it as it is. But the lighthouse scene is pretty good for an ending. Doesn't make much sense, like most of the movie does. It doesn't make much sense, but that's okay. That's okay. You know, by the time you get to the ending of the film, if you're still watching it, the lighthouse scene will have been worth it.
If you say so, Kevin.
Trying to get people to actually see the movie, even if we don't think it's that. You know, if we think it's just for kids.
Yeah,
Oh
definitely
Jesus.
put it on for your kids' next slumber party if they want to be generally creeped out beneath the age of 10. But past that, save yourself.
Jesus. No, I will say this. This will not appeal to anybody who watches horror films on a regular basis. This is not a film that will appeal to most anyone, general audiences who just watch a horror film a year. They will probably think this is so generic and boring that it will be not worth their time. That being said, like you said, like we've been saying the whole episode, it is a safe film for kids. So, any final thoughts on the film Darkness Falls before we get to rating the movie? Because I'm really interested to see what you rated.
No, Kevin.
All right, so for everyone listening to the show right now, what we like to do is we like to rate every movie that we watch based on a scale of 1 to 5 stars, 1 being very poor, 5 being very good. Where on the spectrum do you place Darkness Falls, Panazzo?
I wouldn't even place it on the spectrum if I could, Kevin. Like I said, it's not that scary. It's bad jump scares. It is not a great movie. It's good beginner horror, but that's the only time you will ever watch this.
Yeah. Well, you said beginner horror, and normally I would say for a beginner horror, I might put Monster Squad or Coraline on there. Or
This is
Monster
not
House.
scarier than that. Coraline is scarier than that. Monster Squad is scarier than this. If you are doing baby steps, like you want your toddler to be able to watch this.
Well, this is the reason why I wanted to have this conversation, is because I could not understand why some people were really scared about this movie, and why some people were like, this is like the most drab, generic horror film I've ever seen. So it's good to have these conversations because, for everyone listening, there are lots of people out there like they will watch this movie and say, wow, this is drab, this is generic, this is not worth my time. And then there's going to be those, for some odd reason, like little kids, they'll be scared. I give the movie a 1 star. I don't think it was a badly made movie. I just think that, one of those things with a lot of movies that I give 1 stars for is it's at least got a plot. If you don't have a plot, then you are definitely going to be below this movie. It's a plot. I won't say it's logical, but there's a plot. And you won't be bored because the plot will just destroy the whole film for you. There are lots of films out there where the plot destroys the whole film, but one ain't very good either, guys. For us horror fans out there, one is like, that's like, we stay away from that. That is kryptonite. We should stay away. It will kill us. With that, Panazzo, I am so glad you decided to talk about this movie with me when no one else wanted to talk about this movie. But I do believe that some of these movies out there like this, and we know as horror fans, there are tons and tons of movies out there that don't speak to our interests. They aren't effective. They rely too much on jump scares as though they're playing to the lowest common denominator. And some of you out there have seen these movies. Some of you out there have heard about these movies. And the reason why we discuss them is because now you know really whether or not you need to take a chance for this movie and not just say, I've heard so much about this movie. Should I see it? We'll let you make that decision on your own. But you know what our likes and dislikes are based on having seen it multiple times. Please don't do it like that. Please, So, with that, I want to thank you all for joining the show today, for joining me on this conversation about Darkness Falls. Make sure to check out all the other episodes that we've had in the past. I guarantee you there are plenty of great movies that we have talked about already, and there might be a couple of duds out there as well. Make sure to like, share, follow, subscribe. Do that thing you do with your favorite podcast on whatever your podcast app is, Spotify or YouTube. Also, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And check out our sister podcast, Conversations in 4Color, which delves deep into manga, comic books, and graphic novels. That is our Patreon exclusive episode. So you have to be a subscriber to listen to that podcast. And from all of us here at Something Wicked Entertainment, we hope you've been entertained, at least, by our conversation about the Tooth Fairy. Have a good day. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production. Written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers. Executive producer, Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.